Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. We are live from Downing Street. You are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Still home to Boris Johnson, despite him being just 32 votes away from losing last night's crucial confidence ballot. As he prepares to meet his cabinet this morning, 41% of his own MPs voted to topple him, a worse result than Theresa May, and she was gone within 6 months. The Prime Minister viewing the result as a success and extremely positive. So what damage has it done to his leadership? Can he survive? And can his divided party unite? And what might become of the rebel MPs? On the show today, the Deputy Prime Minister again, Dominic Raab, Labour's Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, and the leader of the Liberal Democrats, that's Sir Ed Davey. Plus, we'll speak to one of the first Tories to call for the PM to go, to get his take on what the future holds for Boris Johnson. It's Tuesday, the 7th of June. Facing the future, Boris Johnson prepares to meet his cabinet amid calls for him to consider his position after surviving a confidence ballot by just 32 votes.
It's an extremely good, positive, conclusive, decisive result.
A Prime Minister of honour would look at the figures, accept the fact that he has lost the support of a significant proportion of his party, and consider his position.
Labour on the attack today, planning to force a vote on cleaning up politics.
They have ignored the British public and hitched themselves and their party firmly to Boris Johnson and everything that he represents.
I'm in Burley to get the opinion of voters in one of the most marginal Tory seats in the country.
Fears for the summer holidays as more flights are cancelled, leaving thousands of people stranded. The US court issues warrants to seize 2 luxury planes owned by Roman Abramovich. Lilibet at 1. Prince Harry and Meghan share pictures of their daughter after celebrating her first birthday during the Platinum Jubilee. Morning, everyone. Prime Minister is calling it a conclusive, decisive result. Boris Johnson is preparing to meet his cabinet this morning with a new promise to continue delivering what matters to the British people as he looks to the future, saying we are going to get on with the job. 41% of his own MPs voted against him in a confidence ballot last night. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, says it's now time to move forward. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, says the result is a fresh mandate from the Conservative Party. But questions over how long the Prime Minister can continue in office after suffering a rebellion bigger than Theresa May, who won her vote of confidence but was gone within 6 months. Questions, too, over whether he will struggle to get legislation through, having lost the support of a potential 3/4 of his backbenchers. Can you believe that? Here's the moment the result was revealed.
The Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
211 MPs backed Boris Johnson. 148 expressed no confidence in him. Boris Johnson hailed it as a win, while some of those Conservatives who want him gone still think he should consider his position.
It's an extremely good, positive, conclusive, decisive result, which enables us to move on, to unite and to focus on delivery. And that is exactly what we're going to do.
And to confirm, you're ruling out a snap election?
Sorry, you keep asking about, look...
Just yes or no?
I'm certainly I see no point in focusing on anything else. And I'm certainly not interested in snap elections. What I'm interested in is delivering right now for the people of this country.
Unfortunately, the issue can't be settled like that. Over a third of the Parliamentary Party has expressed no confidence in the Prime Minister. A Prime Minister of honour would look at the figures, accept the fact that he has lost the support of a significant proportion of his party, and consider his position.
Well, the former Conservative leader William Hague sharing a similar sentiment. While Johnson has survived the night, the damage done to his premiership is severe. Lord Hague wrote that in the Times this morning. Words have been said that cannot be retracted, reports published that cannot be erased, and votes have been cast that show a greater level of rejection than any Tory leader has ever endured and survived. Deep inside, he should recognise that and turn his mind to getting it out in ways that spares the party and the country such agonies and uncertainties. Meanwhile, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has hit out as the Tory MPs who voted to save the PM, saying they've ignored the British public.
Conservative MPs made their choice. They have ignored the British public and hitched themselves and their party firmly to Boris Johnson and everything that he represents.
Well, joining me now is Conservative MP for Bournemouth East, Tobias Ellwood. Hello to you, Mr Ellwood. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What is your view this morning on what happened last night?
Yes, you just quoted William Hague. I think if there was normal times, we would see a resignation, we would see cabinet members encouraging that and the party to move on. But that's not the world that we face. This is far from a conclusive result. It's not a defeat, but it's not a win. So for the moment, I accept the democratic outcome and I encourage all colleagues to do the same. But as you've been saying, 41% is a significant chunk of MPs that now need to be included in shaping the party's future. The conduct, I would say, over the last couple of days shows that there's a lot of work to be done to unite the party. You know, number 10, Jacob Rees-Mogg, trying to spin this all as a Remain plot, based bizarrely on an article that I actually wrote of trying to improve the Brexit model by daring to suggest that we join the single market. You know, backbenchers need to be able to express views and deep dives down on those issues. But this was almost like a Trumpian attempt to mislead and deliberately to distract us. It shows a worrying grasp of the concerns of about 150 colleagues about the direction and vision of the party. So there's a lot of work to be done to a reshuffle is now required, bring in fresh talent and actually start to focus on the bigger issues. Make the cabinet construct actually work. Let's do things that appeal to the country, not just to our base. More exciting policies than the privatisation of Channel 4 and bringing back imperial measurements, but a real economic strategy that's actually going to help tackle the cost of living crisis.
Does that mean that you're now falling in step behind the Prime Minister again?
As I say, for the moment, that is what we're obliged to do because of this vote and the fact that the Prime Minister is determined to stay. But as you've been, again, alluding to, history will repeat itself following votes of no confidence unless there's a massive overhaul in the style and substance of what we actually do. We need to think bigger, much, much bigger in the cost of living crisis. If you are genuinely interested in bringing down the cost of food, then let's lean into Ukraine and keep the port of Odessa open. There's a gap in the market for international leadership there. We have a design for a modular reactor stuck in number 10 that would help actually make us more energy security, improve our independence, if you like, on energy security. But it's still stuck there and it needs to be approved. There are so many ways that we could think bigger picture. And at the moment, we're stuck in micro policies that focus on just appealing to our base.
So are you suggesting, forgive me, Mr Ellwood, that this is just a stay of execution for the Prime Minister?
Yes, that's exactly where we are. We know that unless we see improvements which are reflected in the polls in the next 3 to 4 months, then the party does what it does. It finds ways to then to move on, ruthless though that may be. So, like I said, the ball is now in number 10's court to improve. It has now my support, and as I say, other colleagues should support the Prime Minister as well. He said he can turn things around, and if he can, then so be it. If not, then we know where this goes. It leads us to defeat at the next general election.
How long does he have?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're talking a matter of months up to party conference to show that. But it also can be done, as I say, in who he brings on board. You know, who actually is around the table at cabinet, able to challenge what cabinet is saying.
Just lost your pictures for a second, Mr. Elwood, but I'm sure that we can still hear you. We are hearing in the papers this morning, reading in the papers this morning, that seriously disloyal MPs could be suspended. In other words, have the whip removed from them. Are you anxious that that might happen to you?
Well, that isn't the way to go forward. That's ignoring the scale of the concern here. 2 out of every 5 MPs are concerned about the direction and travel of this party. And that needs to be brought on board. It shows, again, I think, a lack of intelligence and understanding, if you like, of the genuine concerns that we're expressing here for the betterment of the party.
We are being told that Brexit legislation tomorrow, bringing forward tax cuts as well, perhaps even a snap election. So it does look as though the number 10 machine has been jolted into action.
Well, I do hope that this entire experience has, jolted number 10 into action and to be more inclusive. There was no caucus, no sub-tribe, there was no wing of the party that was behind this. Concerns about where the party was going, what number 10 was actually doing, came from all corners of the party, and the number 10 Prime Minister should be aware of that.
Would you support a call for the rules to be changed so that the backbenchers could have another vote of confidence in the Prime Minister before the year is out? Some suggestions that Sir Graham Brady could look at it being within 6 months, if that's what the majority of the Conservative Party wanted to see happen.
I understand that's what the 1922 committee are actually looking at deliberately for this reason. Because if we are now going to have this stay of execution, if we are now going to recognise the democratic outcome and support the Prime Minister, then let's give the Prime Minister time to improve. But as you're implying, methods can be made, the system can be adjusted to mean that the current rule of allowing the Prime Minister an entire year would be changed.
So is that something that you would support?
I would see us having to go down that direction, and I would support it if there's a requirement for it to be introduced. But as I say, for the moment, I support the democratic outcome of what happened last night, and it's up to number 10, it's up to the Prime Minister to act on his word, to say he can actually turn this around, turn our prospects in the polls around as well, and show that we have a chance of winning the general election.
OK, good to talk to you, Mr. Elwood. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking to the Deputy Prime Minister in a few minutes before that, let's squeeze in Tamara here at Downing Street this morning. Hi, what do you make of that?
Well, what a night, Kay. And the rebels like Tobias Ellwood, who at times seemed to be kind of a lone voice calling for the Prime Minister to go, turned out to be quite numerous, 148 of them, 40% of Conservative MPs. And once they've said that, once they've voted that way, once we heard some of that scathing criticism, you can't take it back. And clearly Boris Johnson is wounded, in Tobias Ellwood's view, so wounded, it would be difficult for him to carry on for more than a few months. How much of a jolt has this given Downing Street? Well, look, they're talking today about unity, about bringing in policies to help people with the cost of living, such as housing, and reducing the cost of childcare. Am I getting a sense that they are desperate to reach out to the rebels and bring them into the tent? Not as yet. Delivery of policies seems to be the line they are going down, but they may find it more difficult than they think to try and do that once you've got this many MPs in outright mutiny.
Interesting that some suggestions that if people don't fall into step behind the Prime Minister, they could have the whip suspended. Can they do that?
So I was talking to someone in number 10 about this morning, about retribution against some of those, not all 148 of them, obviously, but some of those who've been particularly vocal. And the message I got was that when you do that, you dig 2 graves, one for yourself as well. So that's not what they want to do. Even MPs like Jessie Norman, who called the Prime Minister's handling of Partygate grotesque, I think that was the strongest intervention yesterday. I'm told that there won't be there's no plans to introduce any sanctions or withdraw the whip from them in any way. But clearly there is, as one member of the Cabinet put it, George Eustace, a job of mending fences to be done here. And at the moment, it's not clear that outreach to the party, listening to them, understanding why they were so disenchanted with the Prime Minister is necessarily the top priority. The top priority, number 10 say, is bringing in new policies to help people cope with the next difficult few months. But of course, they may face opposition from Conservative MPs in bringing some of those policies forward. And at the end of the day, yesterday was a vote against the Prime Minister's character and integrity, and it's very difficult to see how that can be changed.
Do you want to have a look through the papers?
Absolutely.
It's always tricky, isn't it, on the road, but we'll give it a go. Who should I show them to, Hadley? There we go. There you go.
Well, the Mirror, as expected, has got Boris Johnson looking very sad with the parties over. I think the Telegraph was quite an interesting one at the back
that's it.
here.
Pull one from the back, why don't you? There we are.
This is obviously Boris Johnson's old paper, Conservative supporting. Hollow victory tears Tories apart. I mean, you know, Downing Street were briefing everybody yesterday. This is not really that bad, but you know, the Telegraph pretty clear that it is. And they say Johnson's authority is crushed as he wins the confidence vote and vows to battle on, but the rebels are circling to finish him off. Well, that's pretty.
The Mail see it very differently, though, I think.
Yes, the Mail are very supportive of Boris Johnson at the moment. Boris vows, I'll bash on. They point out the cabinet's rallying around, and yes, Number 10 are saying, look at how supportive the cabinet is being compared to, say, with John Major when they were all out trying to shaft him. But
there's a cabinet meeting today, isn't there?
There's a cabinet meeting today, and unity, I'm sure, will be the watchword.
Lilibet?
Yes, Lilibet, very sweet. A Knight of the Blonde Knives, stabbed in the back by 148 Tories.
If 32 had voted the other way, he'd be out.
Yes. And some are saying
close.
If they'd waited another couple of weeks until the by-elections, maybe they would have changed sides, but who knows. Wounded Johnson in peril.
That's the eye for you this morning, the Express.
Express, divide and unbowed, I'll lead the party to victory. The Express, and humiliation, says The Guardian, and critics casting doubt on his claim that it's an extremely good and conclusive result.
And finally, the Times.
Finally, the Times, a wounded victor, and they say their comment piece says he's firmly in limp-on territory, and that's the risk, of course, that in a few months' time he cannot seem to carry it. To do anything, which is what Theresa May found. It was like wading through treacle trying to get anything done.
OK, we're going to be hearing from Dominic Raab in just a moment or two. He was out yesterday supporting the Prime Minister. He's written a piece in the Sun newspaper this morning supporting the Prime Minister, and I'm guessing he's going to be doing the same. Very much so. Dominic Raab has been one of the most loyal lieutenants of the Prime Minister throughout this whole Partygate saga, and he, along with the whole of the Cabinet, have been very supportive thus far yesterday, but you compare to Rishi Sunak, who was very factual in his tweet yesterday, saying the Prime Minister has won the vote and we move on, but Dominic Raab says that this is a win. One vote over a majority is a win, and I think we can expect more of that today. But of course, I'm sure he knows, and the rest of the Cabinet know, that the next few days are going to be very tricky if the Prime Minister wants to restore authority. OK, for now. Tomorrow we're going to be, as I said, speaking to Dominic Raab in just a second. He will be coming into Number 10 for Cabinet. I'm guessing the first thing the Prime Minister will do will thank his loyal lieutenants for their support, all of them, yesterday. Yeah, loyalty is hugely important to Boris Johnson. There's no surprise that we often see stories in the papers about how those who have been loyal will be rewarded. I think the difficulty he has to face now is that, during the sort of arm-twisting operation yesterday, when rebels and those who were wobbling were called up by Number 10, maybe jobs were promised during that, and if you offer people jobs, you have to move other people, and that is always the difficulty. It certainly is. Tomorrow, for now, thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Well, as promised, the Deputy Prime Minister is with us now. Again, it's always great to see you. Dominic Raab, thanks for joining us. 41% of Conservative MPs voted against Boris Johnson, and that's just 906 days, according to our stats people, after he secured the biggest majority in a generation. Why did they vote that way, do you think?
Well, look, we had the vote yesterday. It's not something the government wanted, but it's something that those who were expressing those dissenting opinions felt was necessary. As you say, the Prime Minister won it with 59%. That's actually more than he got in terms of support when he was elected leader of the Conservative Party. But we've had that vote now. I think it was the prerogative of those calling for it to have it. The Prime Minister won it clearly. He won it by 63 votes, as I said, 59%. And now the most important thing, I think, is to respect that result and to move forward. And last night we had the National Security Bill have its second reading. That's enormously important right now with the threats from hostile states, including Russia. I think we should be focused on that. We've got the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill coming for second reading in the House of Commons. Great opportunity to empower those local leaders to drive up growth and development in all of the so-called left-behind parts of the country. We've got a national insurance tax cut coming in July, the cash grant of £400 energy rebate coming in October. I've got the Bill of Rights we're finalising the text on. There's a huge agenda, and I think it's important that we come together and focus on the people's priorities and get away from, frankly, the Westminster internal conversation that has dominated.
OK, if 32 Conservative politicians had voted the other way, he would no longer be in office today. How much worse was the result than you thought it would be?
But they didn't, and I come on to show. I always want to. You ask very fair questions, and I always want to answer them as best as I can. But to be honest with you, the whole point is, my whole point would be, all of that speculation, all of that hypothetical debate, that's over now. We had that vote. The Prime Minister won with 59%, and we move forward. I don't think the precedents apply because we've got a far bigger majority. We don't have the hung parliament that people talk about in the context of the contest and the issues in 2018 with Theresa May. And we've got 75 working majority, I think the number still is, and we've got this packed agenda. And of course, for the glue in the Conservative Party, I think, as well as the public interest, the interest of the country, is move forward, deliver on the agenda from national security through to levelling up, to deliver on that relief for the cost of living. We've got a Bill of Rights I'm looking forward to bringing forward, a victims bill, parole reform, all of that important work that brings people together, but above all, focuses on what our constituents and the public expect, and that's where our energy should lie now.
Why then take time out of your busy day to appear on TV twice in 24 hours and write an opinion piece in the Sun newspaper if he's as safe as houses?
To make the case. I always accept the invitation to come and speak to UK. Wild horses wouldn't keep me from doing the early morning round, as you well know. But look, we do need to make the case. We've got 2 years to deliver and demonstrate we're delivering. And I think we're the ones with a plan. I think this Prime Minister is full of vision, determination and, if anything, renewed energy to get off the Westminster insider track onto the outward-facing agenda of delivering for the people. And I believe that we've got the plan, the energy and the team, which Labour can't match. They can't rival. I don't think they're doing anything other than carping from the sidelines. And that is where all the energies of all our MPs and the whole government should be.
But if you can't convince, or he can't convince 3 out of 4 of your backbenchers, what hope have you got of convincing the country?
Well, the Conservative Party's always been a broad church. There's always dissenting voices. Ever since I've been in...
As I always say, Mr Robb, people died in Broadchurch.
Well, that may be true, but actually one of the gifts of the Conservative Party is that it does house, if you like, a broad tent, a diverse opinion. But that must come with the galvanising force and energy of coming together to deliver for the people and not make the life easy, not give a gift to the Labour Party. When we do that, we're at our best. And I think, it was only a year ago we won Hartlepool, which we hadn't won, is it for 60 years? As you said, politics changes very quickly, but we need to be on the front foot, delivering for the people. And I think that's the best galvanising force for the country, but also for my colleagues.
Yeah, this is what one of your elder statesmen said, former Conservative leader Lord Hague. While Johnson has survived the night, the damage done to his premiership is severe, in his words, and he should know. Votes have been cast that show a greater level of rejection than any Tory leader has ever endured and survived. The writing's on the wall.
Look, William is free to... He's been a leader of the Conservative Party. He's a commentator now. He's free to commentate. I'm frankly focused on action. and what we do next. And what we do is we press through the National Security Bill, as I said, critical for dealing with those hostile states, in particular, think about Russia. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, I think critically important, again, shows that detailed work on the plan that only we, the Conservatives, have got to lift the life prospects right around the country. I'm looking forward to debating the Bill of Rights and passing that unprecedented piece of legislation through Parliament. I'm looking forward to working with Priti Patel, the Attorney General, Suella Fernandez as well, on the whole law enforcement agenda. We're going to be talking more about that, in particular putting victims at the centre, reforming parole. So we can galvanise around those things, or we can continue to commentate and debate with the commentators. I think that the former is by far the right thing to do for the country and the recipe for success for the Conservatives.
But how are you going to stop any civil unrest within the party? Blue on blue, as it's called, even at the top echelons. I mean, the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, yesterday, talking about the former Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, who she used to work under. She actually tweeted, your pandemic preparation during 6 years as Health Secretary was found wanting and inadequate. Your duplicity right now is destabilising the party and country to serve your own personal ambition more so. I mean, how are you going to stop stuff like this happening if you're trying to be a party united?
I think you make a good point. Look, what I'd say is the more we talk about the Westminster process or the internal process, the Conservative Party, the more of that there will be. I like and respect both Nadine and Jeremy Hunt. He's one of my Surrey neighbours. And we will need all of the energies of all of our MPs if we're going to deliver for the people on the priorities that I've described. And frankly, if we were going to take the game to Labour, which is in a total mess, and we're letting off the hook if we're talking to each other. So I think it's time to come together, and I think you make the point very well.
Well, the door is certainly open for months of infighting, perhaps made even worse if you lose the two by-elections which are coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. You'll say, in response to that, because I've spoken to you a lot, let's wait and see. Looking at the polls, it's disastrous for you, especially in Wakefield.
Well, actually, I noticed one of the polls that came out over the last 24 hours had national polls rather than by-election polls, had us closing the gap with Labour. So what I would say is if we want to continue to do that in relation to by-elections, but also what will matter ultimately is the general election, get on the front foot. Focus on the people's priorities, come together, deliver on our agenda, from the economy and the cost of living to the crime-fighting agenda to the levelling up agenda. And it's very simple and straightforward. That is the recipe for success. I believe it's a positive agenda that brings the country together, but also my colleagues in the Conservative Party together, and we should be relentlessly focused on that.
That was a body swerve worthy of the Wigan Rugby League front row, let me tell you. What about these by-elections?
Look, by-elections are always challenging, but look, we as I said, politics moves very quickly. I think we've got great candidates in both Tiverton and Wakefield. We won Hartlepool little more than a year ago. But by-elections aren't the acid test. The acid test is the general election. We've got probably 2 years, and our focus should be relentlessly on delivering sustainably, long-term, because that's the stuff people remember. People don't remember, if we're honest, I think a lot of the pollsters would say is they don't remember by-elections come the general election. It's an opportunity to express different views about different things. It's not the opportunity to change the government. And when you have the opportunity to change the government at the general election, people will care about the bread and butter issues, which is why we need to be focused, all our energies, all of the talent we've got right across the piece in the Conservative Party, in government, on delivering for the people of this country. That's what matters. There's nothing else really that matters. Everything else is a distraction from that laser-like focus.
OK, it's a litmus test on the popularity of the Prime Minister, is exactly what it is. Are you saying that even if you lose these two by-elections, the Prime Minister is still solid as a rock in the building behind me?
Look, I will be fighting tenaciously to win both of those. We've got great candidates. I've been down to Tiverton. I will go up to Wakefield. I think they're both important, but they aren't acid tests. By-elections never are. We often win back at general elections seats that go one or other way in a by-election, and that's true of all governments. What matters now is not the froth of Westminster or indeed by-elections. What matters now is, are we on the front foot delivering for the people of this country? And as I said, I think we should all be focused on that national insurance tax cut in July, the energy rebate of the cash grant of £400 in October, forgive me, the national security bill, the regeneration and levelling up bill, the Bill of Rights, the crime fighting agenda. That's the forward momentum that we need. And I think, bluntly, it's the right thing for the country. It's the right thing for Conservative MPs to rally behind.
Yeah, you've also got to look forward to the COVID inquiry and the Privileges Committee inquiry into what happened in the building behind me.
Look, these are all challenging times. We've been through Brexit, the pandemic, as you rightly say, the likes of which we've never seen before. We've got a war in Europe, but I believe in all of these areas, the Prime Minister and the government got the big cause right. And ultimately, that's the question and the judgment. That's the question. Well, can you say that in a withering tone?
Deputy Prime Minister, look at what happened with the care homes. Literally, elderly people were being sent out of hospital without being COVID tested to go into care homes. Then we had the parties here. Then we had £12 billion for our test and trace. Where on earth did all of that money go? Then we had £4 billion being written off for fraud as far as the furlough was concerned. Then we had the national insurance increase. And then we've had the highest taxes in 70 years.
So, okay, let me retort. Allow me to list the positives amidst the challenges. The fastest vaccine rollout and booster campaign in Europe, as a result, all of which the PM stewarded through from the R&D trials to production, as a result of which we got the economy opened up quicker with the fastest growing economy in the G7 last year, second fastest predicted this year. We're the ones with the plan on the cost of living, and the Prime Minister has shown the kind of leadership in Ukraine that meant when he addressed the Ukrainian Parliament, you had Union Jacks flying. We've had people singing God Save the Queen across towns and cities all over Ukraine. I believe that is the strong leadership. But I don't doubt these have been challenging times, Kay. But the big calls, this Prime Minister got right.
OK, we're out of time, but one doesn't cancel out the other, does it?
No, and no, you're quite right. Okay. And that is why in 2 years' time, the public will assess this government on the big issues of the day. And I think we've got the answers and Labour doesn't.
OK, my prediction for later on is that you're going to come to number 10 behind me for the Cabinet meeting. I'm going to shout a question to you and you're going to ignore me. That's what's going to happen.
You're almost certainly right as ever, Kay.
It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you. Bye.
Thank you. Joined now by former Boris Johnson advisor. Here we go, Will Walden. Hi, Will. Can I hear Will?
Hello, Kate. Can you hear me?
Ah, I can hear you now. Sorry about that, Will. What are you making of the Cabinet coming out to rally around the Prime Minister?
Well, no great surprise. I mean, Dominic Raab should be hostile fast bowling from you, but Dominic Raab should be opening the batting for England. Such was the drop dead bat that he managed to portray. But the truth is, Kay, and they all know it, and Boris knows it. This is the worst possible result short of losing. The Prime Minister needed a decisive win last night, and he didn't get it. He's told us it's convincing, it's decisive. It isn't that, unfortunately. It's 75% of his backbenchers voting against him, and he wants to move on. I think the problem is that I think it's very unlikely that he's going to be allowed to move on. And the bare fact this morning is that ultimately the Prime Minister is really no longer in control of this process. There is a small window for him, presumably, that if these two by-elections don't go the way that the polls predict and they hold on to one or even hold on to two, I think it would be a miracle based on the polls. But if they do, I think that may give malcontents pause at that point. But the other thing we can be sure of, as demonstrated by Boris's statement last night, is that in his own mind, he's going absolutely nowhere. He's determined to hang on, and it'll take an effort from senior Tories to get him kicking and screaming through the door. But at the moment, I don't think he's going anywhere.
OK, so can I take from that it's all over for Boris Johnson?
Well, as I say, there's two things in his favour. One is that there hasn't been an election in terms of those by-elections, and although last night was was not decisive for the Prime Minister and is a real problem. I think if this result had come in the wake of 2 by-election losses, we'd be having a conversation about, when the Prime Minister is leaving in the next few weeks. I don't think that is a given yet. And one of the big factors in that is that, unlike, say, Thatcher and Heseltine back in 1990, there is no Michael Heseltine. There is no big beast. And I think in many ways that's why the Prime Minister survived last night. It was very, very close in the end. But I think that there will have been those who were thinking about voting against him who looked at it and thought, can we really junk, the best political asset we've had in 30 years, the best campaigning asset we've had in 30 years for the unknown? And I think that that's the big problem for those who want the Prime Minister out, is it's not clear who that person is, and it's not clear also whether the cabinet will be prepared to look at the writing on the wall post the by-elections, assuming that they lose them both, and take the revolver and the bottle of whiskey and take Boris into a room and say, sorry mate, time's up.
If you were still in Downing Street, what would you be saying to the Prime Minister this morning?
Boris will be full of contradictions. He'll be angry, frustrated, confused, but I think deep down he'll be very worried. And I'm not sure there's much I could say at this point. I think 6 months ago I would have said, tell the truth, get on the front foot, don't obfuscate about this. But Boris isn't one for apology, and he's also not one for change. And ultimately, this is a self-inflicted wound. I think there's very little you can say. It's unsurprising that they're saying the things that they're saying, because they can't really say anything else. But I would caution one word of warning. If I was there and he was listening, I would say this. And Dominic Raab is absolutely right about this. He's talking about the broad church of the Tory party and the need for unity. This morning in the papers and with the political correspondents, there's an enormous amount of briefing from those close to Boris Johnson about the malcontents and that, how they should be punished, and it's absolutely outrageous and how dare they. If he's going to have any chance of surviving and doing the right thing for the country and getting everything back on track, they've got to stop this nonsense. Dominic is right. They need to come together. But it's not just the malcontents need to come together. It's the people around the Prime Minister. They need to grow up and stop acting, frankly, like this is some sort of, schoolyard frat or fight. They've got to be serious about this stuff and briefing the papers to the extent that people need to be punished and how dare they and all that sort of thing, I think is rubbish. And I think the Prime Minister needs to get a grip, and he needs to get a grip quickly.
Just before I let you go, because I know you have to dash, thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. Was there a point that was the tipping point, do you think, that resulted in the Prime Minister finding himself in the position he was in last night? When you saw, for example, him going up the steps with Carrie Johnson at St Paul's Cathedral and he was being booed, did you think... This is tricky.
Obviously, that did not help. It was very unfortunate, because you wouldn't expect that sort of crowd to necessarily be anti a Tory Prime Minister. But I think, as Graham Brady said yesterday, it seems that the letters were in before that. I think there are a lot of tipping points, and you can go back to Owen Paterson and Peppa Pig Gate and all that sort of thing before any of this started. And the way that they have handled this throughout, from December, there are no parties, I wasn't at a party, oh, there were some parties, nobody cares. But I think the big problem is the lack of contrition. I think when, Boris responded to Sue Gray, there was a sense that he didn't really believe he'd done anything wrong. And I think what's happened is that Tory MPs have gone away during the break and they've heard voters, and in particular now an increasing number of Tory members and activists saying that's simply not credible. So I think if you have to look at any point, it's probably that point. But one thing I'd say to you, final thing, Kay, yesterday, the Prime Minister addressed Tory MPs in the 1922, and he didn't change at all. And Boris is not going to change. He only knows forward gear. And he basically said yesterday, I'd do it all again. I didn't do anything wrong. And I think ultimately that's what is costing him at the moment.
OK, Will, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Pleasure, Kay. Take care.
You too. We're live in Downing Street again for you this morning, the morning after the night before, and that bruising vote for the Prime Minister. Earlier, I spoke to the Conservative MP for Bournemouth East, that's Tobias Ellwood. He told me that Boris Johnson could be out within a matter of months if he can't turn things around.
Unless we see improvements which are reflected in the polls in the next 3 to 4 months, then the party does what it does. It finds ways to then to move on, ruthless though that may be. So, like I said, the ball is now in number 10's court to improve. It has now my support. And as I say, other colleagues should support the Prime Minister as well. He said he can turn things around, and if he can, then so be it. If not, then we know where this goes. It leads us to defeat at the next general election.
How long does he have?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're talking a matter of months up to party conference to show that. But it also can be done, as I say, in who he brings on board, who actually is around the table at cabinet.
But despite winning the vote and being technically safe for a year under the current rules, can he survive that long? Well, around 41% of Tory MPs decided it was time for a change in the leadership and voted against Boris Johnson last night. Before that, the last PM to face a no-confidence vote was Theresa May, and that was back in 2018, December of that year. Nearly 37% of MPs voted against her, but despite holding on, she resigned from the role within 6 months. Back in 1995, John Major triggered a leadership contest against himself. Only 27% of his MPs voted for his challenger, John Redwood. Mr Major continued as Prime Minister, but lost heavily at the general election to Tony Blair in 1997. It was an absolute landslide. And of course, Margaret Thatcher found herself in a leadership contest when she was challenged by Michael Heseltine in 1990. Like last night, nearly 41% of Tory MPs voted against their leader. Not enough for Heseltine to win, but party rules stated that the winner needed more than 50% of the overall vote and to be 15% clear of the runner-up. Mrs Thatcher initially said she would contest a second ballot, but then withdrew just 2 days later. Well, joining us now is Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner. Hello to you, Ms Rayner. Thanks for joining us. I suppose, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place this morning, aren't you? Because you're glad to see what happened to Boris Johnson, but I'm guessing you want him to stay in post now until an election.
No, I don't want Boris Johnson to stay in post because, as you know, many of the public see politicians in general as untrustworthy. And I think Boris Johnson is pulling down the standards in public life, which is why we've got the motion today to uphold them. But I think he's doing a very disservice to the country, and it's pretty clear now that the British public have lost all confidence in Boris Johnson. I mean, if you can't have a Prime Minister that follows his own rules and doesn't lie to Parliament and lie to the British public, then where is the standards? We've lowered the tone so bad that, he could get away with just about anything. So I don't think it's a good day. I think he is mortally wounded now, and I think that, he's only got an 80 majority within Parliament, and therefore he's pretty clear that over 70% of his backbenchers didn't back him. So I think he should have done the right thing by now and resigned already. But this Prime Minister doesn't really consider himself to follow rules.
But don't you want a wounded Prime Minister in position while you sort your party out?
No, I think, our party, obviously, in 2019, in the general election, lost badly. And I think since myself and Keir have taken over, we've been making steady progress. If you'd have said we are where we are today, back then, I think most people would have laughed at us. But we know we've got work to do. But I think, when you've got a Prime Minister who lies to the British public, who breaks his rules. I mean, number 10 was the most heavily fined house in the whole of the United Kingdom when it came to the COVID rules. Cleaners were having to clean up vomit and wine off the walls. I mean, it wasn't a one-off. This was serial partying going on in number 10 when people couldn't see their loved ones. I don't think it's going away. I think every day that Boris Johnson is Prime Minister is damaging the standards in public life, and it damages us all. So I don't think it's a good thing that he continues. I think he's arrogant. I think he's dismissive. I think he's a liar, and I don't think he should hold the office of Prime Minister.
Yeah, but you as a party are still not ready to run the country, are you?
I think we are. I think we've shown that actually when you look at the issues that people are facing at the moment, whether that's the cost of living, the travel chaos, whether that's the situation with the NHS, we've got the answers to those damaging questions that people are asking at the moment. Boris Johnson is too busy navel-gazing, looking after himself to look at the issues that many working people of this country are facing at the moment. And that's damaging for people because, rather than saving and supporting people that need that help now that vote for us, Boris Johnson is trying to save his own skin.
But how can you be ready when the leader and the deputy leader are still facing a police inquiry?
Well, because you see, here's the difference with the police inquiry on that occasion when we were in work. We're very confident that we were working, and we've said categorically, if we were issued with a fixed penalty notice, we would resign, because standards in public life matter. It matters beyond me, it matters beyond Keir, and it matters beyond Boris Johnson. He broke the rules that he set, and he's decided that those rules don't apply to him. I think it's damaging for the public, because, you know, if he breaks those rules and lies to the public now, what else is he going to lie about? You know, he's bringing everyone down. I think that's the issue here. And the big difference is that there is one investigation into one work event that we're very confident that will be fine, and that if it isn't, we've said categorically that we shouldn't carry on in post. I think the Prime Minister, over 120 fixed penalty notices, numerous parties going on in number 10, and he's had a fixed penalty notice and he doesn't think he should resign. I think that's appalling.
But facts are facts, aren't they? And the leader and the deputy leader of the opposition have both received questionnaires. So, in other words, question under police caution, and they still have a police investigation outstanding. You're not ready. You can't run the country yet while you're in that position.
Well, yeah, of course we can. You know, we're very ready to do that. We've been talking about the issues that matter to people, like the windfall tax on the energy companies to support people, to look at a renewable energy programme that creates jobs in this country and deals with our long-term energy needs, to have a new deal for working people that provides flexibility and work that pays for people. We've got a programme for change, and we're getting on with that. And we're very clear that if the police found us to be guilty and give us a fixed penalty notice, we would resign. We're very confident that we didn't break the rules and that we followed all the rules to the letter.
But that's rolling the dice, isn't it? And that's putting the Labour Party, in jeopardy, because if that did happen, and you don't know if it will or not, if it did, and you were in the middle of a general election campaign, say the Prime Minister calls a snap election, then the leader and the deputy leader would have to step down. What would that do for the credibility of the party?
But I don't think it's rolling the dice. I think it's called doing the right thing. I think there has to be a standard, a line that is drawn between the contract to the British public and those that hold public office. It's an honour and a privilege to have the roles that myself and Keir have got. And we know that we do that with the goodwill of our party and with the people that voted for us as MPs. We're saying that if we broke the rules, we would resign. We would not carry on. Boris Johnson says it doesn't matter and has laughed in people's faces and lied to them when they couldn't see their loved ones. Now, if myself and Keir did resign, we're not the only people in the Labour Party. We're a team. We work together in the Labour Party and have done that, and we work in the interests of the public. Unlike Boris Johnson, who is a bit of a tin pot dictator now, who thinks he could just carry on regardless anyway, who's broken his own rules. And he's not listening. He's lost the confidence of the British public, and he's now lost the confidence of many of his MPs. He's limping on because he doesn't think the rules apply to him. And I think he's going to find out pretty clear through the by-elections that actually the British public do not like liars, people who break the rules. And I think it's going to be very damaging for his party and for politics in general if the Prime Minister carries on.
Tin pot dictator, that's very strong words there from you this morning, Ms Rayner. Will the Labour Party be calling for a vote of no confidence in the whole government?
Well, today we've set out a motion which is about upholding standards in public life, which Boris Johnson again wants to cherry-pick that. The Chair have been very clear that the whole report should be implemented, and we agree with that. So we've put a motion down today to ensure that we at least set a bar that is higher than where Boris Johnson is, so that we can, restore some trust in public office. And of course we'll look at all options going forward. But, the Prime Minister ignores. He should have resigned months ago. He knows he broke the law. He knows he lied to the British public, but, he'll just keep limping on because he doesn't think the rules apply to him. And he's laughing at the general public and taking them for fools. And I think most of the public will not move on while Boris Johnson is Prime Minister.
And in answer to my question, will you be calling for a vote of no confidence in the whole government?
Well, we'll see how we go on for the rest of the week. Obviously, we'll speak to other parties as well. But we're very clear that the Prime Minister doesn't have the confidence of the House. It's pretty clear from the votes of his own MPs that he's lost a lot of significant confidence within his own political party. And if he had an ounce of integrity, which he removed from the code, he would have resigned by now.
OK. Good to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
When you hear Angela Rayner there, Kay, talking about Boris Johnson limping on, taking the public for fools, you get a flavour of what Keir Starmer is going to be saying to the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's questions every single week for the rest of the time that he remains in office. And that is the difficulty here. We get the feeling from Boris Johnson and very much from Dominic Raab that everything's fine. We're just business as usual. There's always a few dissenting voices. We're just going to get on with our agenda and everyone's going to move on. We're going to draw a line and, the 148 members of the Conservative Party who said they had no confidence in the Prime Minister can just row in behind him. Clearly, that's not going to be as easy in the doing as it is in the saying. And Labour have been given an opportunity here to prod the Prime Minister about this every week, every little bit of dissent from an MP he gets. And the big question I think Tory MPs are waking up to this morning is, does Boris Johnson try to bring in some of those rebels? And it's hard to see how he can. Does he sack people in his existing cabinet and bring in some of his detractors? If he does that, he looks like he's sort of taken hostage by his opponents. If he doesn't, then others in the party will be more critical of him as well. You bring in some of the sort of liberal left of the party, and then you upset those on the right. So he's in this. He's in a way, this is the worst of all worlds, as his former advisor Will Walden put it. He's now stuck there, but his levers of power are very limited.
OK, thanks very much, Tamara. For now, let's go up to Bury in Greater Manchester, home to two of the most marginal Tory seats in the country. Fraser's there in Bury North for us this morning. Hi, Fraser. What's the mood there this morning?
Morning, Kay. Well, the mood is pretty buoyant in favour of Boris Johnson, in fact. You would think that someone like this up north, there's obviously serious financial issues up here, economic issues and so on, that people would not be too happy with him. But the majority of people that I've spoken to today say, well, this vote's over, he's still in, let's let him carry on with it. People didn't think he'd done a bad job during the pandemic. A lot of people think that he did OK making sure that Brexit went through, which was why a lot of people lent him their votes in the first place. One chap I spoke to said that he voted Conservative for the first time ever in the last election, and he said he would vote Conservative again, despite the Partygate scandal, despite various allegations, despite various concerns about Boris Johnson's leadership. People do seem to be still backing him here. Now, in terms of the marginal nature of this constituency, it's a majority of only 105 for James Daly. Now, he did say that he understands people's concerns, but he says he continued to back the Prime Minister because of his belief in levelling up the North.
OK, thanks very much indeed. I'm going to just move slightly out of the way because look what's happening here at Downing Street tomorrow. This is the bunting that has been put up for the Queen's Silver Jubilee.
The party's over. Yes, I think it is. Yes, it's difficult to avoid this image, but yes, the bunting is taken over, and the about turn from the pageantry of the Jubilee on Sunday. We now know that Boris Johnson knew this was coming to yesterday's back to reality. OK, as we continue to look at those pictures, Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, is joining us. Now, hello to you, Mr Davey, just reflecting on the fact that the bunting is coming down here at number 10 Downing Street, and I'll say it before you do, the party's over, some might say.
Well, it ought to be. I think there should be a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. Liberal Democrats are tabling a motion of no confidence in Boris Johnson, and if it can be debated, I hope a lot of those 148 MPs who clearly don't have confidence in the Prime Minister will vote with the Liberal Democrats and other opposition parties so we can remove this Prime Minister. You know, there are millions of people, Kay, out there, families and pensioners who are suffering. They're facing a summer of discontent with rising prices, the cost of living crisis, the NHS crisis, and now the travel and holiday crisis. We need to see this Prime Minister gone, and that's why Liberal Democrats will put forward a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister today.
So you will, what support do you think you will have, or from where? I did put that actually to Angela Rayner, and she said they are keeping a watching brief on that.
Well, I'm sure if it was debated that all opposition parties would get behind it. And now we know 148 Conservative MPs don't have confidence in the Prime Minister. This is the chance to speak for the British people. So I hope the Leader of the House doesn't duck this and allows this debate to go on. If he stops it, he clearly feels that the Prime Minister would lose. And then it will be in the hands of people in East Devon, in the Tiverton and Honiton by-election where Liberal Democrats are challenging the Conservatives. And the people there could speak for the British people, switch from the Conservatives to back the Liberal Democrats, to send a message to Conservative MPs that this lying, law-breaking Prime Minister has to go.
Just to clarify, because I'm a bit confused, and you're an expert at these sort of things, Tamara's just pointed out to me, is it a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister that you're tabling, or a vote of no confidence in the government?
It's a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. It's a very important distinction. 148 MPs, Conservative MPs, yesterday voted for a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister. So that's why we want that same motion to the House of Commons. So those Conservative MPs can join the Liberal Democrats and other opposition parties to express what I've felt for a long time on behalf of the many people I've spoken to on the doorsteps, the British people who don't have confidence in him. It seems to me that there are, unfortunately, too many Conservative MPs who aren't listening to the British people. They aren't in tune with what people are saying and thinking, and they're not allowing our country to move on. And so we can have solutions to what I think is going to be a summer of discontent if we don't see changes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know about the cost of living crisis, Kay. We've talked about that before. We've got the NHS and care crisis. We're now looking at a travel and holiday crisis. You know, people are having problems getting to and fro from the country in the airports and at the channel ports. We're seeing people applying months ahead for their passports, and the government's passport office not able to deal with those passport applications. This is a government in crisis. It's completely incompetent. It can't do the day job. And part of the reason is that the Prime Minister is too busy trying to save his own skin. They're putting his interests, the interests of the Conservative Party, ahead of the national interest. And that's not right. That's why this Prime Minister has to go.
But rules is rules. He only had to win by one vote. In the end, he won by more than a comfortable enough majority to continue on.
Well, Kay, those are the rules of the Conservative Party. I'm talking about the rules of the House of Commons. And the rules of the House of Commons say that if there's a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister, then he would have to go. So this doesn't need a change in Conservative Party rules. I mean, if they want to do that, it's up to them. This is about the people who are elected on behalf of the British people to serve them being able to express their view in the Prime Minister. That's why Liberal Democrats are tabling this motion today. And I think if the Commons could debate that and hopefully vote for it and see the back of Boris Johnson, then we really could see the sorts of policies that Liberal Democrats have been arguing for. For example, a cut in VAT to give every family out there a £600 tax cut, and that would lower the rate of inflation because it would take prices in our shops down. It would help struggling businesses. That's sort of constructive policy that Liberal Democrats want to see to help our economy, to help struggling families. And I think if we can remove Boris Johnson, then we can open the door to that sort of policy to help people who are struggling.
OK, so Ed, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Tamara's still here. In 20 seconds, Tamara, tell me whether that is likely to be passed, a vote of no confidence in the Prime
First
Minister.
hurdle will be getting time in the Commons, and not clear whether the Speaker would allow that. Doubt it would happen today. So for another day. And will Labour bring a vote of no confidence in the whole government, as happened several times under Theresa May? That is probably a bigger question, because then that might get time, and then the Lib Dems could support that, and that will put Tory MPs in a difficult position.
OK. Thanks very much indeed for explaining that. All today's top stories, well, mostly from here, actually, coming up in just a moment here on Sky News Breakfast. Stay tuned.